I'm going to officially call this special town hall, state of town meeting to order at 7:05. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So thanks for everybody for coming. This is our second annual State of the Town. I think what's unique about Princetown is we're small enough that we can be casual. We're small enough that we can share our ideas. It's small enough that we can go into some details about our government, what we're planning, what we're doing, how we're spending your money, what plans we're making. In some great detail, and this is what I want to go through tonight. We based our mission statement, if you go to the next slide, Joe, is to make Princetown government as open and as transparent as possible. So we take great pains to go through and explain to everybody what it is we're doing, how we're doing it, what was our logic behind our decisions. I get joked from our other council members that sometimes I take a little bit too long, but I think that's what's one of the positive things about Princetown is we have the ability to take our time and to deliver the message. Again, why are we doing something? What are we looking at? What's the logic behind all our decisions? And again, part of it again is to highlight and explain in detail. Overall, to make Princetown government more efficient and responsive to the residents, and again provide as much information to the Princetown residents as possible. One of the reasons when I ran, or asked to run for town government, was that I thought I could be able to contribute. I have a couple skill sets from what I do in my private life, and I thought I could apply them to the town. One of the biggest motivators was I used to go down and see my parents and family in New Jersey, and just talking to them was like, so how's the Smiths, how's the Affinities, how the Myers? And a couple of times my parents would go, well, the Myers had to move out of town. I said, well, why? They retired, they've been there their whole life. The taxes got too out of control. It was too much for them. They had to sell their house where they grew up, where they raised their kids, and move out because the taxes were out of control. Now, I can't do anything about Washington, I can't do anything about Albany, I can't do anything about Schenectady, but I can help here and I can point it out here and say this is what we can do. And be very clear and open and transparent when I'm talking to you at the board meeting, say this is why we're doing it, this is why we think it's a good investment, or why we can save some money here. So, through this mission statement and through the vision of the board, this is what we're hoping to deliver to the team or to the residents. You can go to the next slide, Joe. So again, welcome to the second annual State of the Town for Princetown. I'm going to take a few minutes to introduce the team. It's a great team. It's very diverse, very knowledgeable. We've got a broad spectrum of skill sets on all our boards, between our volunteers, our boards, which help our team, especially the board, come to decision making. If you want to talk about a certain issue, we have such breadth and experience across all our teams that it helps contribute to the logic for the board to make their decisions. So I'm going to introduce the team, then I'm going to go to the financials. The financials are a little bit dry. Bear with me. I was coached by my fellow board members to cut it a little bit shorter than I did last year, so I have taken the time to cut it down, to less slides than I did last year. But again, I want to be very clear and very open and very transparent about what they are and how we came to, where we've done. We're going to do a 5-year comparison, and then kind of a quick overview of some of the areas of improvement for 2012. We're going to touch on the 2013 budget to see where it breaks down, and then we'll move into some goals, 2013 focus, and some goals. I do want to say, one of the things before we go introduce the team is why the financials are really important to me. To me, as a project manager, when I see a financial spreadsheet and I see tasks and people working on teams and stuff, to me it paints a picture. And maybe again, it's just my experience in my professional life that it paints a very clear picture to me on where we're going. It probably doesn't paint the same picture to everybody else, but so again, I've been encouraged to expand on some of this stuff. Why do I see what I see? What my experience has brought out into me. So okay, sorry, Joe, go ahead. So this team, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this screen. Of course, the newest addition is Mr. Michael Clavis, our attorney. We'll touch on some of his accomplishments a little bit later on. Go ahead, Joe. We got the water department. We got Dr. George Mead, Isla, his bookkeeper, Gene and Lou. We got Paul Denninger, and again, Isla. We got probably the best historian in Schenectady, Irma. We got Gino, Alex Trebek, Santa Barbara. Ask Gino any question, and he'll give you the answer. Like, if you're facing east on a sunny day, how far back has your fence got to be? And Gino will know it. Code enforcement, probably our best code enforcement person west of the Hudson. Darla Galata, great dog control. She's actually working with Dwaynesburg and Rotterdam, so great skill set. Darla is also our secretary for about all our boards, even though she's taking a short leave. Again, a great talent with a lot of experience across a lot of fields. Thank you. The planning board, again, chaired by Pat Bishop. Pat's a scientist, plus her team. We got Vic Benson, a sales engineer with an IT background. Again, a very smart person and a great team behind him. Go ahead, Joe. The board of assessment, they just met May 28th. Again, led by Paul Denninger. Some great skills there. We got our PAC committee chaired by Carl Barta. Carl's with the tax division of New York, so another great a great skill set. Go ahead. We got the ethics board chaired by William Little. Then we have the civic committee chaired by Mary Sue Reed and her extensive team. And then finally, the comprehensive plan update committee. Again, this particular board, we took a great amount of time, 6 or 7 months, putting together this board. We try to get as many and as diverse a team as possible. I'm sure everybody understands the comprehensive plan was a controversial document, but again, that's why we took such time to reach out to everybody on both sides of the aisle to come together and meet. And Paul Golding did a great job putting together a very great document. Again, a very diverse crowd, a very diverse team here. So again, we're going to go through the 2012 financial review. Again, why it's important to me, and again, with my background, is you try to use your experience and what the past comes to learn, to provide lessons learned. What did you learn from maybe some mistakes? Where can you improve? It should be evergreen, a learning process. So, we're going to touch on the town board objectives. Then we're going to do the 5-year comparison, a very shortened version. We'll touch on the 2013 budget. Then we'll go into the water department and their financial reviews. Probably want to spend a lot of time on the water department because even though it's a separate fund, there's the general fund and then there's the water department fund. They both act the same way. They're both separate funds. So I'll explain to you in detail the general fund and then just touch real quick on the water department because they function the same way. They're broken up and accounted the same way. And then we'll talk about some results in some water bond refinancing. Go ahead, John. So the town board objectives. the town board is elected to oversee the town, in particular the financials. It's a stewardship. There's a guiding here. We're supposed to be guiding the town, focus on the financials, reducing spending, increasing efficiencies, employing our vision of where the town should be heading based on the feedback from the residents, particularly a small town like this. We should be able to hear what you're saying, guide the town forward, especially financially, safeguard the vision of the town through strategic investments. Again, there's technologies out there that are driving costs down. There's a lot of ways we can strategically invest to reduce spending, increase efficiencies. Touching base on our vision again, I think everybody in town loves the town. They love the way it is. They love the rural characters or characterization. We want to keep that focus. We want to strategically invest. Growth is coming, but we can manage the growth. We manage it financially. We can manage it through how the buildings are coming, how the buildings are going. And then again, financially, with some fiscal overviews on it. And one of the struggles that this town board has had, again, is keeping our eye on the goal. The goal is always the focus. It's always, the financials. It's, again, leading the town forward, with leadership, with our vision. I keep talking to the team saying, just stay the course, keep your eye on the ball, forget the paint in place, forget the soap opera that's going on inside, it's just white noise. Keep going, keep forward, keep to the truth and keep the vision, and we'll keep going forward. One idea that I personally think is important is return on investment. I think this is important not only from a personal perspective, but eventually when you get to the investments and the financials, it's important. But from a personal perspective, the town voted me in. They gave me the vote of confidence, saying, Mike, go ahead. We like your vision. We like your discussion. We like where you're going. You voted me in. You gave me the confidence. You've given me the confidence now. You're paying me. To me, that's very important. It's the way I was raised. Like, if someone's paying you, you do the job. You do the best of your ability. And that's my return back to you. This is my personal goal. And this is how I guide myself when I'm making decisions at the board level. What's the return here? What's the return for the residents? What's the return for the town? Do we strategically invest in this technology? Do we invest in this person? So return on investment is not only, again, from a financial perspective, but it's also a personal perspective. Are you investing in the town? I personally take that very important. You invested in me, I'm trying to return it. All right, Joe. So I kind of debated a couple times because this chart is a little bit tricky. Typically, especially with this size town, and we can talk to it as a family manages their own financials. As a family manages their household budget. You start January 1st, you have a job, you have payroll coming in, you have expenses going out, you got gas for your car, insurance, school, clothes, etc. You have a savings account, and you try to do a budget on it. And that's really what we're trying to do here. And we'll go through that a little bit more, but what's kind of tricky about this one slide is a little bit tricky because it's town budgeting. So end of year, the equity fund at end of year, that's how we ended the year. 12/31, I have to stand over here, but 12/31, 2012, we ended up with a equity fund of $323,000. Included in that fund is our two savings funds, not much, $34,000 and $27,000, almost $60,000, or maybe a little bit more. And then we have the appropriated fund, and then in some sense we have a cash balance of $126,000 or $127,000. So it's when we look at a budget, it's just like your home budget. Even though 12/31 you exit 2012 and go to 2013, your savings account rolls over the next year. Even though Uncle Sam says that's the end of the year, that's how much money you're breaking this year, that's the way it goes. It's sort of the same here. You roll into the next year, you carry your budget over. So it's important. The appropriated fund is how much money we're projecting we need from the revenues. Just like when you know, January 1st, you're planning to go to Disney World with your kids or something, you're planning on and making your plans based on the fact that you're forecasting that you're gonna have a job for the next 12 months. So you're forecasting every 2 weeks you're gonna get your paycheck. That's what appropriated funds is like. It's like we're gonna be appropriating this money to spend, even though we don't necessarily have it yet. Just like a private job, you don't necessarily have it until you do the work. It's sort of the same way in government. We're going to project our revenues, we're going to expect them, so we're planning to spend the money. Technically, we don't necessarily have it. It's general practice, it's okay. The better idea would be is if we can increase this, the total savings, so we had enough of a savings account, we could project our appropriations or our expenditures over the year based out of the cash, and then as the revenues came in, you just backfilled in what. We're not that rich. As you can see, technically, all we have is, you know, 34 and 27 in cash savings. There's savings bonds, you know, collecting maybe 1%. But what's a key, you know, couple key numbers. We increased the equity fund from 274 to 323, so, you know, $50,000 plus. So overall, again, we increased our total savings in cash over this 1 year by about 50,000, 49,000. You know, 49,000 out of 126,000 is what, 40%, so I think we did great this year. I think a pretty impressive number, but again, this is where I come back to, I see things and I go, whoa, that's pretty good. So again, this is a little bit, again, town financials, but as we move into the next charts, hopefully I'll be able to show you what it means if we looked at it from a family's budget perspective. So go ahead, John. So 5-year revenues, you can see in 2012 we jumped about 25,000. We jumped across all our revenue lines a smidgen, you know, here, there. It's about 5% increase. A good news story, but it's a good news story. We didn't drop revenues, but again, it's about 5%, so pretty good news story. Nothing significant. Again, all the lines, and there's various lines, increase the revenues by 1% or 2%. Go ahead, Joe. Here's kind of a very key message. So our expenditures, you can see that from 2011 to 2012, we cut our expenditures, we cut our costs by about 49,000, about a 10% cut or reduction in expenditures. Pretty important. We didn't lose any services. We actually invested. Being a rookie supervisor, I made some, you know, a couple mistakes, and we'll talk about them. But overall, still in all, we still managed to cut our savings. What's important is, if you look at these past 2 years, 2012 or 10 and 11. In 2010, they barely missed the revenues, and in 2011, they went over the revenues. So like any family checkbook, you overspend your revenues, you gotta go into your savings. It's a pretty easy formula. That type of, you know, overspending your revenues, you can probably just follow the course there, but sooner or later, there's gotta be another action. You got to cut services or you got to raise taxes, one or the other. So good news story, revenue went up a little bit. We managed to trim our expenditures by 49,000 or so. Pretty good news story. Okay, Joe. The budgets, so here's our budgets. What's kind of important here, which is I'm still, you know, working on, is, to me, our budgets should be aligned very closely to our actuals. Because there's a lesson learned there. You shouldn't be hiding money necessarily in your budget. Um, it's pretty easy to say, hey, I came in under budget, you know, that's great. When you have a budget of 600,000, you only spend, you know, 519, it's pretty easy. So although I don't think it's a significant point, I think it's important that we are driving our budget down. It's going to take a little more work to bring it down to where we're forecasting as closely as possible as our actuals. And the extra money that's in the budget should go into a savings account to draw some interest. But again, it's a work in progress. We did manage to drop it, you know, by 17,000 or so. But again, the big message is we cut our expenditures and we came well underneath the revenues. We increased our, this year we had a negative 13,000 in 2011, you know, revenue to expenditures, and this year we came in about 55,000 over or under expenditures, so it's a change of like 65,000 and change. We look at a graph from positive to a negative. Okay, Joe. Again, we're touching base back on the original chart there, the revenues, the expenditures, budgets, and then finally the fund equity. So that's how we ended 2012 on 12/31 or on 1/1/13. That's the town budget. That's what we brought over from last year. Okay, Joe. So I'm going to go through a couple of things. The biggest expense, and you'll see this on the 2013 budget, is our labor and our benefits take up like 51% of our full budget. So if you're standing back and looking, where do we need to try to improve? Where do we need to try to control our costs a little bit more? The first thing that's going to come out is your personal, your labor. You got to look at your labor. Nowadays, the technology's there, the skill sets are there. It should be pretty easy, well not easy, but as you'll see a little bit later on, you can drive efficiencies using new technology. So you can invest in technology, drive efficiency, and save some expenditures. So this year, even though we only dropped by 5,000 or 6,000, so it's what we're trying to do is continue to push that message down, the arrow down. Okay, Joe. Benefits. You can see like retirement, and I'm sure everybody reads the papers. Retirement from 2009 to 2012 is almost doubled. I don't think we can expect to see that change, even though the Wall Street has gone up and is now going to be picking up some of the funding from the retirement funds. The question is, did Albany ever learn a lesson? I guess we'll find out. Social Security is kind of flat. Health insurance is flat also. But again, this is the 11% of our budget is the retirement or our benefits. Okay. Our other, this is probably the last one I'm going to move out from comparison on everything, highway, services, etc. One of our biggest expenditures has been legal. As you can see, in 2012, we spent almost $60,000 in legal fees. So at some point during the year, I had to say, look, this is out of control. They're costing us, it's almost $6,200 a month, the previous law firm. Now, you know, we spent some money on Norman Skill and trying to fix that when Hurricane Irene came through, so we put some engineering, some legal fees into that. But still, when we were talking with this one firm, they were charging us every time we called them. You know, if they passed the phone to somebody else, the rate went up. I think we finally took the scale for me was I called up and asked the attorney a couple questions. He didn't know the answer, so he called in his partner, senior partners. Now I'm paying 2 lawyers to answer the phone. We pay, as a town, the associations of towns, like $1,200 a year. And with that, the Association of Towns is a group in Albany that wrote this book, Town Law. And as part of your association fees, you can call them up for free legal service. So when I was talking to the law firm that day, the lawyer and the senior partner, they were telling me how they called the Association of Towns because they didn't know the answer, and they were charging me. I went, that, you know, that was about it. I said, that's enough. You know, that's just enough. I cannot do that anymore. I was flabbergasted. So we were privileged, and he's showing every dime, but we went with Mike, and Mike's firm. It's a flat fee. It's $3,000 a month. It's not every phone call, it's not every email, it's not the mileage back and forth. It's a flat fee. And this is what the state controller's office doesn't insist, but recommends, like, go with a law firm that's gonna give you a flat fee. Now, at $3,000 a year or $36,000 a year includes helping the town board plus planning and zoning. So, you know, we expect to save, you know, a great deal in lawyers' fees next year. Again, you know, even though, you know, for 4 months it averaged out $2,300, this was the important number. Yeah, they're just averaging an outrageous number. So again, we expect to find significant savings in our legals. All right, Joe, thanks. So even though we saved and I cut our spending by $49,000 last year, there were areas of concern, which is fine because this is, to me, and again in my job, is like, so, okay, so we went over on some lines. It's not the end of the world, but what can you do with it? What can you learn from it? How can we improve it? So I'm not going to touch on them all, but like one of the biggest areas is going to be court security. Even though it only went over by $1,000, the cost is $23,000 for court security. Dwaynesburg pays half that, and you have court 2 nights a week. I'm struggling to understand why we can't cut that. I know what the issues are. I just need to deliver on the solution, but that is a focus for this year, is to cut our court security. The bookkeeper and the assessor both went over their lines, but they called and asked permission at the end of the year. Look, we both need new computers. They're outdated, they weren't working, some of the new software is coming in, the state required them to use, they need to invest. So, you know, we gave them the okay to go and purchase our computers. Town clerk supplies, I know they're overlined by 25%. The attorney, we already talked about that, but that was the prime reason why we went with them. Like, they were just going, it was going out of crazy. The next big one was the web administrator. So there's been some criticism on that, but the reason why was last year was the first year we really started putting the videos up on the Princeton website. Now, because sometimes it can be a little bit gabby, sometimes the meetings went a little bit long, so it takes an hour, a couple hours for Tim to upload the videos. So we've got a new Ben Moore taking pictures. So as part of that and a lessons learned here, Ben, as part of his price, will now upload the videos. And we're also going to ask, like the planning board secretary, Darla, or Sandra Brzezinski, me, the bookkeepers, they're going to start posting their pieces of information to the website. So we're expecting to see Tim's line drop back down to where it was, maybe reduce it a little bit more, and maybe use Tim's, you know, expertise in another field. Again, reinvesting in the technology. Town hall, telephone, and miscellaneous went over budget. Overall, the whole town hall budget line came under budget, but those two we need to look at them again. Part of lessons learned. Go ahead, Joe. Central Print, which is our newsletter, we went over last year, but you know, we're already talking about how we're going to reduce that, just using more volunteers. Dog control was just additional mailings, and the SPCA, we need to join them every year. So general code, I'll talk about that in a little bit, but I'll skip that part right now. And those are probably the big ones. But the highway. The highway looks like it's a big number, but overall, highway came under budget. That's just one line in the whole highway budget. So highway again came under budget. So again, a good news story. But the reason I'm highlighting this is that, you know, I'm not, or the board is not afraid to share with you that, hey, there's some areas here we need to improve on, and apply some lessons learned. So that's that. Okay, Jim. Here's our 2013 budget. Obviously, I couldn't put up all, 17 pages of the budget. It's just too much. But again, you can see that payroll is about 41%. Benefits are about 11%. So that's 50% of our budget is in personnel. I'm not saying, again, we need to, it's just something we want to focus on. If that's where your biggest dollars are and you want to try to save some money, you want to go for the biggest expenditure. It's like the credit card insurance that you hear commercials like, I got 4 credit cards that are over debt. Well, which one do you pay down first? You always go after the big dollar. The biggest credit card, pay that one off, and then move to the next one. So that's why when we focus, we're going to focus on some of the biggest areas that have the concerns and try to drive those costs down, and then try to manage the smaller ones. But if you're going to spend effort, return on investment, you want to focus on some of the bigger hitters. So that's our budget for 2013. Go ahead, Joe. So I need to talk about the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about. So we've done some research. We've taken the time. When we first came into office, we asked the whole staff to contribute. What is it you do every day? How do you spend your time? What exactly your tasks are, how much time you spend on it. Very detailed explanations on what everybody does. So we've got cooperation from, again, 90% of the staff. But there's 2 areas that are pretty clear here. As you can see, somewhere in the 2007, 2008, expenses, which is the personal services, went up versus the volume of work, which dropped. And still, it's still a huge gap. That's an area we need to focus on. All right, Joe. And then the other elephant in the room is in the justice or the court. Again, the same thing. Somewhere in the 2007, 2008 timeframe, the justice personal PS is professional expenses or services. Sorry. The number of tickets, has dropped by almost 40%, where the salaries again just increased. So somewhere in the 2007, 2008, those 2 departments spiked their services. Where actually, when the town boards looked at the other ones, the assessor's office, the water department, their workload has stayed flat, and so is the payroll. So, as a board and looking at the financials of the town and where we're going to focus, again, through investments in technologies, investment in personal skills, combining jobs perhaps. There's a number of ways we can do this, but these are the first 2 we need to look at. There's backup charts in back of the handouts, which you can get to a little later on. I'm willing to sit and talk to you and walk through them and explain to them, but anyway, those are that. All right, Joe. So I'm going to touch on the water department. I'm not going to go through this exact same detail as I did with the general fund. It functions the same way, as you'll see. Go ahead, Joe. Well, actually, let me just back up a little bit. So I want to just give you a quick status on a couple of things, then we'll talk about the results, and then we'll talk about the refinancing and why it's important to everybody in town. Go ahead. Thanks, Joe. So the corporate report. So a year and a half ago or so, it came to light that there was bolts that were corroded on the main water district. And at the time, they thought it was going to be all the bolts throughout the whole main district. So a study or a report from a company called Corpro was funded, and when it came back, and I'm sure I probably won't even go into it, we'll let an engineer like Joe Jasinski walk through the technical parts of what's going on with the bolts. But anyway, the Corpro report, this engineering firm, said there's 3 ways you can do this. You can go with a full replacement, which that includes the hardware and the services to deliver. The labor to dig the holes, change the valves, change the bolts. Not the valves, just the bolts. About $421,000, $422,000. Pretty big number. Option number 2 was leave them and fix them as they arise. The risk here is it can drag on for years, and every time there's an emergency, you got to open a hole up. So it's like, do we be proactive or not? And then the third option was to be proactive and go in, and because of the report, they isolated areas of the line that they thought were more problematic than others. So what we've worked out with George, with Dr. Mead, is that, so we'll do both. We'll fix the problems as they arise, and we'll be proactive. So for example, there's a couple of pipes that broke during the initial freeze of this winter, and we just had a main break up here on Route 7 past weekend. But when George opened the hole up and fixed the patch, or patched the main, he also replaced all the valves on the saddle tees and the valves that are in that hole. So again, it's a combination of, you know, option 1 and option 2. So hopefully, again, it'll be a little less than this over the next few years, and then eventually, you know, they'll replace all the bolts with stainless steel. And then as just a final, so, you know, George is, as part of his normal maintenance, he cleaned the screens and the pumps in the well houses this year. So, you know, again, when we go back to the budgets, and you'll see him coming up, that George has still managed to come under on his expenditures significantly. Okay. Again, so here's the water budgets. Looks the same. I don't want to spend, again, a ton of time on it, but it works the same way as the general fund. We got personal services, supply, debt, principal. A couple of key points on the bottom there. He increased the fund equity by $75,000 or so. Reduced his spending. Added revenue of, you know, $70,000. So they did pretty good this year. So a hand to George and his team. Okay, thanks, George. So the big news, the water refinancing. So some great news. We got our credit rating from Standard & Poor. Although it's not, to me, I think it's a great news story. Typically, towns our size do not rate this well. Just because we don't have the volume, we're not that big, there's not that much money, etc. But we still came up with a positive with stable outlook. Now, we've never had a rating before, so this is a great news story. Kudos to Isla Mead and the rest of the staff for their processes over the years. But again, it was keeping, and along with the board, keeping you focused, keeping our eye on the ball. We've got a great credit rating for the town. That's important for the southern district, but it's also important for the northern district, because when we sign the bill, and you'll see the, you know, there's the rest of the schedule, that credit rating affects the whole town. Even though the southern district is paying for the water, it's the whole town who actually signs for it. So when we reduce the term, well, not when we reduce the term, but, you know, as we save the money, eventually it's going to affect, you know, the whole overall town. So great news story there. So on 5/30, you know, our 9 of our 10 bonds were purchased. We did not purchase the 10th one because it would have been an increase on the 4th district, the Route 20 extension. So we passed on that bond. We did refinance, we did refinance 9 of our 10 bonds. So we're in this gap right now. Matter of fact, I got to sign some papers tonight, but on 6/18, we're going to, hopefully we'll receive the Office of the State Controller's formal approval, and on 6/19 we'll close. Just to reconfirm with everybody, there are no changes in the maturity dates of these loans. Whatever the maturity dates for the 6 loans were on the 1st district, or the main district, are exactly the same as they are now. The same with the 2nd district and the 4th district. There's been no change on maturity dates. So they weren't extended, they weren't brought in, they stayed exactly the same. Projected savings over the term, we're expecting to save, you know, $318,000, a pretty good number, I think. If it was a present value, you know, today, like if we paid the loans off, we'd save immediately $185,000. So pretty significant savings. Basically overall savings of 8.2%. The Office of State Controller, their normal approval is 2%. Anything under 2% they won't approve, unless, I'm assuming, there are special circumstances. But Typically, that's their bar, is 2%. So we came in, well above, again, almost 8.2% savings on the 9 loans. So great story for Isla and the rest of the staff. Again, great news, hopefully for the Southern District. Go ahead, Joe. So the projected savings, so what does this mean to everybody in the Southern District? And this affects everybody in the Southern District. As we all probably, maybe not in the North District know, but when the tax bills go out, everybody in the Southern District has to pay for the loans, even if you're not hooked up. If you're hooked up, you pay the operations and maintenance, which is a separate bill. But on your county tax bill, there's a line in there that says, for the funding of the water. So if you're based on an assessment, average assessment of 110,000, people on the main line will save about $40 a year. On Dower Road, it'll be about 120,000. Route 20 is the one loan we did not touch, so there's no change there. And then on Quackenbush, about $91 savings. Again, based on an assessed value of 110,000, which is not market value, so it's just the assessed value. Okay, thanks, Joe. So 2013 focus and goals. So I think we've done some great work between last year and this year. We've invested. We're going to invest in the technologies. We invested on our people, and again, it's all with the vision of financial or fiscal responsibility, employing technologies where we can to reduce costs. Planning for our future. Protecting private businesses and our infrastructure. We'll touch on Time Warner Cable, Schenectady County Sheriff, and then some future plans. So go ahead, Joe. So general code, or E-code. This is a strategic investment. What it's going to do is take our, nobody's got a book here, but we have a loose leaf binder full of our laws and ordinances. What we're going to do is codify it, organize it, update it, and make it electronically available. As everybody's got kids now in every high school, everything is research is done on the web. So we're going to put our codes and our laws and our ordinances up on the web. And it's going to make it easier for researching, for printing, for organizing. It's going to be cataloged. Why are we doing this? So when I first got in office, I walked around to Gino, to Dan, to everybody, and said, what makes your job hard? What's the challenge for you? And this goes for, again, Dan, Gino, Pat, Vic on zoning. What's the challenge? And the answer across the board every time, the first thing out of it is like, our laws are outdated. They're barely enforceable. Okay, so that's great. So what are we going to do about it? This is what the general code is going to do. Not only are they going to make it electronically and organize it and make it available electronically on the web, they take all the laws and as they do the research, they look at all the laws and they'll come back to us and say, we're going to bring all your laws up to 2013 standards. Now, why is that important? Again, looking at the return on investment. We worked on a dog ordinance, just to update the dog ordinance, and it took us 3 months, 4 months, and so why is that important? Well, you had the 5 members of the board, you had Darla, we had Mike Cuevas, we had all, plus feedback from other departments. All these teams and man hours looking at one law. It took months. If you look at that, the town has about 100 laws. There should be no comma there or an S, but we've got about 100 laws, maybe a little bit less. So if it took us that long to do one ordinance, that was just an update. How much time are we going to spend on trying to bring everything up to 2013 standards? And what's the risk? So now it's like, what's the risk if we don't? The risk is litigation. Somebody challenges our law, or we can't issue a ticket, or something's out of code. There's the risk that there's possible litigation later on. So we thought, here's the return on investment. What's the risk is doing nothing, our laws are outdated. If we try to do it ourselves, it'll take decades. and the manpower and labor to do it is just going to be huge. So we would say, all right, for a cost of $15,500 over 3 years, that's 3 budgets. You know, again, a little over 5,000. You know, we can well afford it. Again, they're going to come back to us and take all our laws and all our ordinances and give them to us at once and go, boom, here you go. They're all updated, or you have to make some choices. You know, do you want your law to look like Niskayuna, or do you want to look like Rotterdam, or a combination? You know, they can give us all these options, and we can do it, you know, very, very quickly. We can bring all our laws and ordinances up to snuff very quickly. So let's say it's 100 laws and ordinances divided by 15. It's $155 a law. It's really reasonable. Again, spread over 3 years, it's really reasonable. So Joe Drzezinski's championing that. Pat Bishop is helping out. And when it starts coming through, you know, we'll ask the whole town, you know, and staff to help. But it'll be available electronically, and also we'll get the hard copies, which, you know, I myself still like to work off a paper copy, but if you're researching, it's obviously a lot easier to find it electronically or on the web. So here's where we're investing in the technology. We're investing it, and it's going to be drastically reduce the labor that would have taken us to update the laws. It's drastic, you know, a huge effort. And it's going to be, you know, again, $155 per law. It's just huge. So again, here's where we're investing. You know, a strategic investment that, you know, is going to save a huge amount of labor. So I think it's a great investment. Go ahead, Jim. Solar power. So here's Mr. Esposito and Councilman Joe. We thought we'd be able to put a picture up here with them finished. Again, we fell a little bit further behind, but you can see that they've got the forms out here built. We're probably in 2 weeks, maybe less, maybe 3 weeks tops, we'll have our solar up and running here and at the 2 well houses or pump houses on Route 7 and Giffords Church. So the investment from New York Light and Energy is probably pushing $400,000 between labor and materials and stuff. And, you know, we were kind of saying, you know, it's no cost to the town, no cost to the town. Well, I need to step back. $1,700, we had to put in permits and engineering. Again, we'll make that back in about a month worth of savings, you know, between National Grid and Integris. So we had to invest in permits just like any citizen in the town. You know, if you put a building up or you put an addition or extension on your house, you got to pay for permits. So I guess we're a little bit incorrect on total no cost, but that is our cost. So everything from New York Light and Energy, including engineering, materials, operations and maintenance, insurance. You know, if some kid walks up and throws a rock and hits the polar panels, we just call up and say, hey, you got a hole, you need to fix it. So it'll be rent-free. What we hope to do is Mr. Esposito and Mr. Drzezinski are going to put a monitor out here on the wall, and hopefully maybe with Tim Bishop and some other of our technical IT people, volunteers. We're going to put a monitor out there that's going to show the exact savings on a rolling screen, like this is how much we're saving every month on it going green. And then, you know, maybe we could roll it over and show the Princetown website, you know, banners, you know, family nights coming, town board meeting here. So we're hoping to put a big screen, you know, probably on the side of the fire bell there. And again, it'll show, you know, the savings in, I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of ways you can look at it, but savings in kilowatts, which equal dollars. And then, so that's an opportunity coming. Again, I want to touch on the estimated savings. Again, probably on the low end, we're expecting 30% on National Grid. We use Integris to deliver our power, so we're hoping to eliminate Integris again at 3 of the sites. So we're thinking, you know, 30% is a low estimate, and you know, if we're paying, and I think last in January, February, you know, town hall is running at $500 a month on National Grid, plus, you know, another 150 or so in Integris, you know, so $700, $800 in the winter. You know, if we're taking 30% of that off for the next 20 years, it's a significant savings. Again, no investment except for $1,700. We invest in the technology, and it's going to save us for 20 years. Again, I think great work by Joe and Lou. Okay. The comprehensive plan. A great effort again by Paul and his team. It was again a long search for a very diverse committee. We wanted to make sure we had everybody's from both sides of the table. You know, people who disagree with the past and agree with the other past documents, put them together and said, you need to come together. You need to be able to compromise, work together, you know, and come up with a plan. So it has been submitted to the board, the last agenda meeting, so we'll make we'll have a schedule here in our next chart of the remaining activities. But again, this is going to be a guide for all town land use laws, not laws in general, land use laws. It's a very flexible document with some diversity, and gives the growth of the community some vision on how to grow. Again, we're expecting hopefully some major implications, economically, with some funding from Metroplex, because again, I had talked to Ray Gillum, and the first question out of his mouth is like, where's your comprehensive plan? Because he's not going to really talk to us unless we had a comprehensive plan. So hopefully in a week or 2 or 3, then I'll be able to go to Ray and say, here's our plan, let's invest in Princetown. But overall, the biggest number or biggest guide is protection of the rural character of the town, part of our vision. Okay, thanks, Joe. So again, just a quick status. It's been handed over to the board. I'll get it up on the website. We'll print up some regular, like 20 copies, because it's got maps and everything we got to fold in there. The next step is the public hearing. Then we'll submit it to the county. We'll do the seeker review. We'll hopefully adopt the plan in a couple months, and then submit it to the county. So again, a great effort. It was a little bit of pain. It was actually a fairly good amount of pain getting through this one too. But again, a great hand to everybody who contributed to that plan. And I want to highlight to the other past plans that didn't make it. They contributed, though their name may not be on this committee. The other 2 past committees put a lot of effort, a lot of work, a lot of sweat, a lot of thought into it. So this comprehensive plan was, part developed with the vision from the other 2 plans. So again, for all the past board members and committee members, the 8 years it's been working, looks like we're finally going to get there. So again, a great hand to everybody, great effort by the committees, and especially as diverse committees it was. It was just great news. Okay, thanks, Joe. Norman Skill, so we're finally getting to it. This is 2 years now in the making. Hurricane Irene damage. As you know, we part of Norman Skill, just I guess east of the pump house was wiped out. A private business there was wiped off his building. Everything was gone. We applied for it and received FEMA approval, DEC approval, and NCRS. So it's going to be about 200,000 plus. So I got an email today, actually, and I think Mike was copied, from Doug Cole. The design is done. They want to approach the board next Tuesday to prepare the process to put it out for formal bid. So we expect, again, by the time we go through the bid process, submit him, come in, formally open them, award the bid, that the creek will run down to a level that they can get in there and start working. 6 or 8 weeks, we'll wrap it up. Again, the plan here is no dollars or cents out of the town's pocket. If this plan goes according to perfect, once they close it and we submit the final paperwork within 14 days, that check from not only FEMA, well, we got the FEMA check actually, from DEC and NRCS should be 14 days after final closure. So it should fund that repair and protection of our main coming east out of the pump house. I do want to again highlight that last year when in January, February, when after the storm, You know, we did spend about $14,000 in engineering and attorney fees. Now, there was people who was critical of that, and I may or may not agree with it, but I thought it was critically important that we protect the water. It's the #1 resource in our town. The difference between a third, you know, a country with bad water and us, or, you know, is the water. That makes your country. You know, you go to Arizona, they have no water. So it was critically important, I thought, to invest in engineering and attorney fees to make sure, and we started rebuilding that business out there, that they were following what we recommended. So, was it a little excessive? Probably. But was it worth it? I think so, because the engineering and attorney fees we applied to it actually rolled into the design. So, again, I thought it was very important. Again, maybe, you know, a little bit of rookiness, but I still stand behind it. So the final design is complete, bid preparation's in process. I think the only open item we have, which is, I have to laugh and say, we actually need a contract between the county, DEC, and Princetown. Even though Andrew Cuomo said, yeah, we'll cover it, FEMA and NRCS pay for 75% of the bill. DEC is going to give us the other 25%. So Andrew Cuomo last year said, yeah, no problem, we'll cover it. It's like, all right, good news. But we have to have a contract between us and the county. So Mike's working diligently on getting that contract so he can pay us when we're done. But that's about the only open item we got left. So a good news story there. We're going to be able to you know, protect that business down there, some downstreet folks. Protect our water mains, which run along there at the pump house on the south side of Route 7. So good news there too. All right, Joe. Latest breaking news, Time Warner has purchased in a private transaction Princetown cable. I'm sure there's mixed feelings, but I guess, you know, it is what it is. So on April 26th, the New York Public Service Commission approved the sale. The May 1st it actually closed. This month, they're going to be, you guys, who's ever on Princetown Cable, will start receiving notifications of the transfer and new channel lineups. They're out there now rebuilding their infrastructure so they can point everything towards the Rotterdam office. So they're putting some nodes out there, maybe some new fiber, etc. In July, they expect the cable customers to begin the transition, and they're hoping that maybe, you know, mid-August there, transition will be complete. Now, what does this mean to us? Well, right now, it's nothing we have. They purchased the franchise agreement. The franchise agreement runs out in 2015, I think. Yeah, I think it's about 2015. So we met with them last week. You know, they said, I said, well, when can we start renegotiating the franchise agreement? It says, you know, probably 30 months before the agreement runs out. So maybe sometime in, you know, a year and a half, we'll start negotiating with Time Warner. The really good news story here is that, I'm not sure if you guys remember reading the paper, but Glenville went to court with Time Warner, and Glenville won, and it was like a $2 million, $3 million lawsuit. There's the guy who wrote it. So we've got the guy who knows Time Warner, and knock on wood, he'll still be here, and they'll do a good job for us too. So that's Time Warner. All right, thanks, Joe. Another good news story, hopefully, knock on wood, is Schenectady County Sheriff. So Dominic D'Agostino and his team have come out here, made numerous visits out here. What they want to establish is a substation for Western Schenectady County. So they've approached the town board or the town and said, look, can we move into your building? And they wanted to take over the whole side. And he's like, well, you know, hey, we'll give you an office or two, but not the whole thing. But as we went through and did some negotiating, this is what's on the table right now, is they will fund the building and extension onto the town hall for somewhere between $120,000 and $140,000, which would take this building out to the edge of the parking lot, and then maybe 20 feet out here to the edge of the little hill next to the road. probably 2,200 square feet. So they'll build the extension and then live here for about 10 years rent-free. What they'll contribute to the town, again, here's where the town board's thinking outside the box a little bit. So why is that important to us? Because when they move in, they'll start picking up the operating costs of the town. So we'll share somewhere between 25 and 30% of the town hall operational costs for the next 10 years. And that includes heat, electric, phone bills, snow plowing, etc. Plus, we can reduce our court costs because we'll have the sheriffs in the building. It's just really a good news story. But what I think is really the good news story is that this, in my opinion, this is what I expect out of our government. As a private citizen, I expect our government to be figuring out how can we share facilities, how can we share costs. Even though we're two separate government agencies, there's an opportunity here for two government agencies to share a facility, share costs. You don't have to go build a new building. Invest in our building, and we'll share the costs. It'll be 10 years rent-free, for an initial investment of $120,000, whatever the number would be, somewhere about 120, I think. I think Lou remembers the square footage. Gino probably knows it backwards, but so I just think it's good for the sheriff. It's good for the county. It's good for the citizens of Princetown. For Princetown, again, it puts another patrol team out here patrolling our office or our roads. I mean, they have to, spread out from here to hit Western Schenectady County. I just think it's great news, and we really could. We're hoping hard on this. I know we've got some competition, but I just think, and we have some friends in our corner at the county level that think it's a great idea too. Again, it's what I think every citizen in government or in private, wants the government to do, is like figure out some things to reduce costs, and this is perfect. But I get kind of excited on stuff like this, so. All right, next, Joe. So we're starting to come to the end here. So, again, some of the additional highlights we've done. We did update the dog ordinance. It took a little while. Again, lesson learned out of that, as we said, wait, this is going to take forever. What can we learn here? Let's invest in general code. They'll bring all our laws up at a quarter of the price. Gino's worked on his zone change application form and process. Another good news story. Our civic committee had a great town-wide garage sale. A little bit interrupted by the tornado that came through half of our town, but great news, Mary Sue. We got the family night coming. That was a great success last year. We're hoping to expand on it, bring the kids. We had the fire trucks here, we had family night here, a couple, 3 movies. So it was only one movie? All right, well, I guess it was a choice of 3. Again, it was a great night. We're hoping to expand a little bit, maybe some, little vendors, ice cream, sodas. Again, we'll bring the fire departments in for the kids to climb in the trucks. The sheriff will be here doing registrations. So it was a great night, and Mary Sue, great job last year, and a great job again to you and your committee this year. So it's spectacular. As part of our updated ethics policies, we're asking everybody in town, town hall, who's a decision maker or can vote on stuff to fill out some financial disclosure forms. Again, it's about it being open and transparent. Like, you can't vote on something if you've got a relationship to it. It's just not right. So we're asking everybody to fill out the financial disclosure forms every year. All the boards, this board in particular, and some of the elected staff saying, they're not going to be for public disclosure. They're going to go into the ethics board or the ethics chair, into his files to hold. And we'll just do it every year. I think, again, it's more of the open and transparent government. Why is this good for everybody? Because it's there, it's published. It's not published, but it's available for inspection. Okay, Joe. Again, some of the stuff we're going to be working on going in the future. Town hall fire alarm protection. Again, I'm pretty sure right now, well, what it is now is we have a fire alarm, and it'll go off here. It just doesn't go anywhere. So we need to make the connection between us and the fire department. And so we may have to invest some money into an alarm generating unit. I'd like to bring back the volunteer appreciation dinner. Again, all the committees, you know, everything from the planning board to the comprehensive plan to the zoning, the bar, plus, you know, everybody. We've got a network and a computer committee now. So we're hoping that the town board will take out of their pockets, let me rephrase that, no, the town board will take out of their pockets the money to fund this event. I think we lean on our volunteers and our boards for their knowledge and everything. And I think the least the board can do is take it, you know, $100 out of everybody's pocket and hold a little dinner here for everybody. So that's what we're hoping to bring back in. Last year we had defensive driving. Hopefully Joe can organize it again. You know, again, the town can come in, you can get a couple points taken off, pretty good deal. Some training sessions on town laws for the staff, and just some other stuff. Go ahead, Joe. And again, so as we start to wrap up, you know, again, the board's going to continue to focus on cost reduction. There might be some pain here, there may not be. You know, we invest in the technology, we invest in our staff, you know, we look at ways to reduce, combine jobs, or free up a person, you know, through technology that frees them up to do other work or other activities. You know, we don't necessarily have to reduce staff to lose service. We don't have to cut costs, or cutting costs does not mean reduce services. It just means we can focus our attention somewhere else. But the ultimate deal, it will reduce the costs because we become more efficient. Again, strategic capital investments, we have some stuff we want the board needs to look at as we start approaching the budget season, which is really late August. We get through the comprehensive plan, we're going to be able to go to Metroplex and continue to pursue some you know, additional revenue opportunities, so that should be good news. And then we'll implement the comprehensive plan through ZRC, so we're looking for some volunteers for that committee also. So it's pretty good news tonight. I think the board and this team have done a great amount of work. We've kept the focus, we've kept the message, we've kept the vision. We continue to stay the course. You know, what's good for the town? What's the vision? You know, forget the white noise. Just stay the course, stay the focus. Focus on the financials, focus on the future of the town, focus on the character of the town. I think this board has done a great job. So I'm going to start wrapping up here. We can probably flip a light on or two, but you know, I'm open for questions. I'd like to focus on what was presented tonight. If you want, you stand up and say your name, or you don't have to say your name. If I can't answer the question, we'll parking lot it. I'll get an answer back to you. I do have, can you flip through, Joe? Obviously my contact information. This presentation will be up on the website hopefully by tomorrow, plus some other backup documents. Go ahead, Joe. One more. So I've got some, one more. So I've got some backup documents here you can look at. I'm not going to touch on them, they're pretty self-explanatory. Go ahead. So if you want to look at some additional documentation that we use when we formulate and make some of the decisions. Again, we just didn't pick stuff out of the sky. We did some research, we looked into it. You know, we were working on it for 18 months. We made some, you know, I think we did some homework here, and it shows. So, all right, let's just go back to thank you sign, Joe, that would be great. So, that's it. That's it, folks. I appreciate your time, but I'll open up for any questions now. Again, if I don't know the answer, I'll get back to you. I'm pretty sure, hopefully I know the question, but yes, very sure.
I'm on Darrow Road, so I'm really interested in the water refinancing. And I want to know the projected savings that you posted there per user. Is that an annual projected savings?
Yes.
Okay, good. And thank you, this was a great presentation. Very, very informative.
Cat Bishop, Vernon Drive. So just to add to Mary Sue's question, can you comment on the cost of the repairs, $125,000 or so, and how we're going to pay for that, and how does that affect our savings the bonds per user.
You're talking about repairs to the water.
Right, so obviously that wasn't budgeted necessarily in the maintenance and operation, or maybe some of it was.
Actually, it is.
Okay, so that will all be covered, and we won't see any increase in our water bills to cover the maintenance.
Correct. Actually, a good question, perfect question. So we do budget, and I think we've got like 50,000 scheduled in there for maintenance. In particular, the reason why that's so high is we are preparing just in case there are a rash of breaks, either just natural water main breaks because of freeze or heaves or rock, punctures a pipe. But we're prepared to replace the bolts. So we have appropriated $50,000 in our water fund for repairs. What I didn't actually wrap up, but I'll leave, hopefully this question leads to it, is that 2 of the 3 solar projects are on the pump houses. So that is going to also reduce the costs of your O&M, the operation and maintenance. Now those operations and maintenance are only for the people hooked up to the water. So that you will see, and I gotta tell you, I don't know how many times you get billed on your water. Is it once or twice a year? Once. So that'll be an additional saving, probably not significant. Well, it depends. I mean, you could see per month, so maybe a couple bucks per user, on the different districts. So we hope that, so to answer your question, yes, we appropriated money in repairs to take care of the any repairs due to the bolts. And on a side note, we do expect, some, I don't want to say significant, but important savings, from the solar for the operations and maintenance in those budgets.
Tim Bishop, also Vernon Drive. You talk about solar and you talk about bringing the sheriff's office in here. Have we done an impact to see if there's enough capacity in the solar panels we have locally to take care of that additional 25% growth?
Yes. The short answer is yes. So as soon as we started negotiating with the sheriff, Joe and Lou immediately went to New York Light Energy and said, look, we're projecting possible growth of 30% of the size of the building. And they've invested in the inverter to bring it up to a higher capacity.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is you have a fixed amount of production and usage is going to change.
Right.
So, it's a very complicated equation that's driven mostly by our usage. And, but New York Light Energy has been very cooperative and very proactive, I think, in helping us, the pump houses. That's where the big savings is going to be down on the Waynesburg Road down there, because of the massive pumps that are.
Well, probably very important here too, because if the
It
sheriff
will.
does come, they're gonna be open
It will.
24 hours. Right now,
Right.
our building basically is open 3.5 days a week, right? Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is a heavy traffic day. The 2 offices are open on Monday, so Friday we're closed, Saturday and Sunday we're closed. And then give limited skills. So we get the sheriffs in here, I'm sure the electric use is gonna go up.
And it will, and it's going to take a year to figure out just, okay, we're saying this is what's working out. And it's going to work out. But,
Okay, good. So they can handle the extra capacity, even with the same square footage on
yeah,
the collectors.
yeah.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
This is probably just my ignorance, but it was a very good presentation about expenditures. I have no idea where the revenue is coming from. Is that covered at some other time? I mean, throwing around hundreds of thousands of dollars. I know I don't pay taxes in Princetown.
That's where our little symbol was there, it's like no town tax.
Is that like county share we get or
Yeah,
something?
so we get some of the Metroplex, we get some property taxes, the court drives revenue. Then there's some miscellaneous spending, permits, dog license and stuff. I can give you the front page of our budget, which shows our projected. Actually, I can give you last year's budget,
Mhm.
and it shows what we actually brought in for revenues and what we've projected for this year. So there's probably, I'm gonna say 12 revenue streams that are, that affect the town. And again, each one ticked up a big percent or two, which added up to 5%. So I can show it to you. From my perspective, I think it's more important to focus on, the revenue versus the cost. Revenue is obviously very important, but I can definitely share that with you and walk through it with you. Any, yep.
Carolyn Sable, Ennis Road. Town miscellaneous, town office miscellaneous is over by 40% for 2012. What makes up the miscellaneous line?
So the town hall miscellaneous is up here?
There was an overrun of $4,000. It was budgeted for
Oh.
10 and then overrun of 4,000.
So what exactly that was, and actually, I have to park that question. And the reason is, town hall miscellaneous could be a lot of things, it could be contractual. We had to buy a printer, actually 2 printers last year. In my effort to be as thrifty as possible, I bought a refurbished printer. It was like $2,000. One of our main printers died. So despite the advice of Pat, I went out and tried to get a refurbished printer. Well, the refurbished printer didn't quite last that long. But I still went with another refurbished printer. I think they told me so. So that's, miscellaneous is what we had to spend almost $6,000 on a printer. That's probably the biggest one that's coming to mind. Well, we had the water, the water.
So you didn't capitalize that? You didn't capitalize the printers?
No,
Okay. Just expensed it?
yeah.
Okay.
The good news, if there's good news, is that overall, the town hall overall budget came under.
Right, right.
But that line we go over. So, lesson here is listen to Pat.
So for people interested in financials, the budgets and the proposed budgets as it goes through the process, that's all posted on the website,
Oh, all
on
right.
the budget, if
Yep.
you want to take a look. But it is nice to have somebody to explain what those line items are. When you
And I
see
should
them.
introduce myself, I'm Dan Gentile on Gifford Church Road.
So, yeah, I'll give you a copy, I got plenty. But I'm writing on some markups, but, it's actually interesting is that when we do our budget process, as we're halfway through it, we're actually comparing what was budgeted for now, like 2012, what the actuals were, and then we, look at where the actuals are in 2013 as we propose a tentative budget for it. So, it's something, we watch monthly. One of the reasons I didn't put up here's where we are today is because, certain revenues come in certain parts of the year, certain expenditures go out at certain parts of the year. So it could be, it's like, wow, we're looking really good, or wow, we're looking really bad. But it's really got to wait for the whole process to filter through. It's the end of the year, and that's why I think it's important we do the comparisons between past years and what we're learning, and then try to compare other budgets. So, additional thoughts?
I would just like to make another comment, and if anyone is interested, Mike mentioned at the end, the comprehensive plan, the ZRC. ZRC is the zoning review committee, and what they're responsible for is actually taking what's in the comp plan, and when there's new laws or new updates to the laws needed, they'll meet as a committee and basically recommend certain zoning updates. This is a good time for this to happen, because as you mentioned, E-code is going to be in progress. E-code is going to be going through our land use laws as well as all the other laws and updating them. So if we're going to be making any changes as a result of the comp plan, now's the time it's going to be happening. So if anyone is interested in being on that committee and helping to craft any new zoning laws, I would encourage anyone, to let us know who you are, and, because that'll probably have to start meeting fairly soon after you guys adopt the new comp plan.
and you'll get an invite to the volunteer
And you
appreciation
might get
dinner.
free dinner out of
It's on the board, out of their pocket,
it. Right.
not an expense. So, any other thoughts or questions? Yes, sir.
That's Mike Barr, Blessing, south end of town, 1178 Gifford Church Road. I thought that was a good presentation, and the comp plan is part of Agenda 21, which anyone familiar with Agenda 21, what that's all about. And the other question I had is about the refinance of the water district. Is that a locked-in percentage? Or if Ben Bernacki changes the basic rate, is that gonna change your bond? Or is your bond locked at this time?
Yes.
Okay, so he can't, if he changes it, raises it, it's gonna be raised.
Well, interesting is, if you look at the chart, we're gonna save 317,000. About 10 or 15 days ago, we were at close to 340. So we locked in at a good time. We lost about 10 days due to some process stuff. So as you know, the market's not only Wall Street, but even with sequester, the economy's starting to climb a little bit. So to your point, Bernanke's not going to change anything today, but it's going to change. But your first question, no, we're locked. We are locked in now because the bonds have been purchased. They just got to get formal approval from the state controller, and it's a done deal. And your second question, I forgot what it was.
So I just wanted to elaborate on the comp plan. It's part of Agenda 21, which is, something that may come that's not too good. But to go back to the other question, it's really a no-brainer to refinance it. I'll say that. I mean, it's great for all the citizens, everybody involved in the water district, really.
Yeah,
There's no, at practically any percentage, up to the 2% probably, as you found out.
yes, sir, yep.
Which this is gonna be which is a lot more than that,
Yeah.
from what that original bond was on the original district.
Exactly.
So I'm saying it's a good thing, but what I'm trying to emphasize to you, it could change at any time, and if you don't jump on it, it could go by. That's what I'm saying,
I jumped on it, Mark.
okay? Well, okay,
I
I'm just,
Yep, unless something drastic happens, we're locked in, it's a done deal.
Okay.
It's gone to Mr. DiNapoli and waiting for his rubber stamp. We're done. So actually, that's a great point, and I want to thank, especially Isla Mead and Mike Cuevas, because, those, Isla and Mike, put a lot of work into it. The documents are going back and forth, we're just like, oh my God, another one. So, Isla's focus, Isla's knowledge, along with Mike's guidance, it was inevitable that the interest rates were going to click up. And they only clicked up by like a 1/100% in that 10 days, and that was enough to drive, a $12,000. I don't want to say a loss, but went from 340 to 318. Still good news. Matter of fact, we opened up that day. It was last Thursday, and they said, "Well, we're projecting 308." It's going, oh man, we went from 340 to 308. But the market changed enough that day. We closed at 314 or 318, whatever the number was. So it's still a good number. It's going to be about 10,000 a year plus.
Excuse me, you're never sure what his next meeting, what he's gonna raise it.
Exactly. I was getting anxious. I was sweating hard. Just,
I just want to mention that, I just don't, government falls asleep at certain things like that. I mean, whether it's town government or county, and you have to stay on it and keep it rolling. That's what I'm
Exactly.
saying.
stay the course,
Yeah.
stay the focus, keep your
Yeah.
eye on the ball. That's what we're doing. Matter of fact, speaking of solar, and I'll move back, but You know, I think we've approached your facility, to put solar up on your building. I don't know, I haven't followed it too closely. And I know when I talked to John Tobias at Platterkill, he's got a great place to put solar. I mean, he's just 100% sun on a cloudy day at Platterkill. So hopefully they'll be able to put solar up there too. Again, driving some costs down.
I called him on that. He's sorry he missed that meeting that we had.
Do you know what the long-term electricity rates are per kilowatt hour for those towns without solar that are bidding for long-term fixed price contracts?
I do not know that, sir.
Okay, well, I know other towns that have bid their electric contracts, and the bids are coming in between $6.75 and $7.45 per kilowatt hour if they want to lock in for the long term. That means those rates are 66 to 88% higher than what the town will pay through their solar contract.
This just gets better and better. It's like, oh my God. It's good to be in Princetown. It's all good, it's all good. So again, and I want to thank, again, Mike, the board, all the planning, all the zoning, the whole team. When you went through the boards, the knowledge is on those, and it's such a diverse team. We've got a senior VP of an investment firm, we've got the biggest landowner, we've got big business owners, we've got small private, owners, we've got human resource people. It's just the depth and breadth and the experience of all these boards, which contribute to, feeding this board's knowledge. It's a great team. It's a privilege to be able to work with them most of the time. We do have a couple small issues that continue to nag. Sorry. Any further questions, thoughts?
Mike, I'd like to say something.
Yes, sir.
Councilman Myers, I just want to speak just briefly that he's been thanking everybody else, but Mike, our supervisor, has done a big piece of work. He spent hours and hours on this State of the Town address. And as a councilman, I would like to ask the audience if we could just stand and give him a round of applause, if that would be okay.
One person on the team.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, I guess if there's no, I'll meet everybody outside. I'll give you a copy of the budget and I'll walk through it real quick with you. I'm glad to go out and say hello. Oh,
I just wanted to say, he not only worked on the budget, he's a good tree cutter.
we did have me and Joe and some volunteers went up to North Kelly over the weekend and tried to help out, the damages up there, which is a couple severe. Matter of fact, I'd like to, maybe in 2 weeks, go back up there with a bigger crew. Maybe Joe,
I think they got it under control. I think Doug Thorpe's gonna take care of it. Their trees.
all right.
Yeah, I think so. That's what they told me.
Yeah.
But boy, I got 150 of them if you want. Just keep cutting. We do every night.
If we show up a week from Saturday.
I'm not feeding you though. I fed them all last weekend.
1 meal per storm.
Pardon?
1 meal per storm.
Yeah,
That's
this
regular.
is, yeah, breakfast.
Thanks,
lunch, and dinner.
everybody. Again, it's a privilege and an honor to work for you.
Thank you, Mike.
I have your little bag.
Oh,
No.